Hello, my name is Tom Stiles, and this is Tom's Radio Roam Show number 116. 116, and then down here, there's a little note for myself, 113. This is a follow-up of show 113, where I showed you an emergency radio that I got. It's under $20. And I told you about the features and what it does. And this is to give you the results of the testing. Okay? Ready to go? Alright, here we go. We go back to the radio. Here is the radio. I got this from my daughter who purchased it off Amazon. It's on my Amazon store right now, so you can purchase it through my Amazon store. It sells for $20. And I'll go to my slides. Okay. The objective of this show is to review the HY-88WB self-powered AM/FM weather band NOAA emergency dyno radio. That's right off of Amazon. That's what they call this little animal. Now, the thing is, this same radio or very, very similar radios are sold on Amazon under different name brands such as Eton and others, but they're not as cheap. This is kind of the original generic, I'll call it, radio that are purchased by these other companies and they put their name on it. It's the same radio as I understand, and it's only $20. Some of those other radios are like $25 or $30, but with the same basic functions. So we're going to give you the results of my testing of this radio today, right now. Are you listening? Okay. So let me go to my next slide. And I'm old school, you know, slides. Okay, here again, which you can't see, here again is the features right off of the web page for the Amazon web page. And since you probably can't read them, I'll read them for you. How's that? Is that a deal or what? Okay. Features. 3-way power up, it says. Power up? Yeah, well, anyway. You can hand crank it. It's got a hand crank, dyno inside. Hand crank it to charge it. It is self-charged by a built-in solar panel. A whopping little tiny solar panel. Now, this solar panel is about equivalent in size to 2 of those little solar lights that you get at the dollar store for $1. So it's not going to have a lot of charging power. That's my guess. We'll see. Okay. What other features? You can charge it by using a USB cord, which is included for $20. And you can charge it off your computer, or if you have a USB adapter that plugs into the wall, charge that way. So it can charge that internal battery. It has an internal battery, and I'll get into that later. Okay. Has an AM/FM radio. Not a big deal. You can get an AM/FM radio, or you can get an FM radio at the dollar store for $1. So it's not a big deal. But it is a big deal. It has a weather band radio. Now, this is an emergency radio, and here in Florida, we just had an emergency. That's kind of why my testing's been delayed a little bit. Now, I'll get into that later. So, you need to get an emergency radio. Maybe not this one, because this is kind of the bottom of the line. You could pay a lot more. It's $20. You can pay $50, $100, $150 for generally the same features, but we'll get into that later. Okay. Has 3 brilliant, these are highly educated LED lights. 3 highly, they probably got a PhD lights. Okay. Telescoping antenna. that's nice. Otherwise, their radio probably wouldn't work. Built-in speaker, that helps. Built-in speaker. Now, a cell phone charging jack, and it comes with a bunch of adapters to adapt to different cell phones. We'll get into that one later. And the dimensions are about 5 inches by 2 inches by 2 inches. You know, here's the pretty small, compact. You can kind of put this in a go bag or whatever. Kind of small. To me, that's a good feature. Some of the other ones with nicer features get really big. So you're not going to be able to put it in a go pack. You're going to have to carry them separately. So anyway, weighs 9 ounces, very light, 9 ounces. Now, the other thing they had in their ad that I just downloaded and put on here is new updated model. Oops. Check that out. New updated model with more smartphone charging support. It will support your iPhone, your iPad, your HY-88WB, do that. So it'll support every, cell phone that was ever built. Yeah, not really. But the one complaint I have seen on other earlier versions of this is that I've seen videos of is that it won't it won't even attempt to charge an iPhone. So I think, okay, now we had our weather report. What was I saying? Oh, people have reported that they tried to charge their iPhone and no way, no indication it was charging, nothing. That's because my understanding is that the iPhone uses more than just the two leads to do its charging. I think it uses 3 or 4. And the original version of this thing didn't have that capability, although it claimed it did, and it had an adapter, but it wouldn't work, so people were not too happy about it. Well, I don't have an iPhone, so I couldn't test it. But anyway, we'll see. So if you got an iPhone, you're on your own. Okay, moving right along. Gee, we're up to 7 minutes. 7 minutes and I haven't even covered it. Okay, now we're going to get to the test results. And specifically, we're speaking about, the power sources. Power sources being crank, solar, and USB, and the power source for your cell phones. That's the kind of testing I did. So for cranking, what I did is I cranked it. It was dead. I left the radio on and then the light on until it apparently was about dead. Now you can get a little more light out of the LED, but not use it. So then I started charging by, in this case, cranking. So I cranked it for 60 seconds. 60 seconds. And I played the radio, and it played for 175 seconds. So almost 3 minutes. Cranked 1 minute, played 3 minutes. That was a completely dead battery, or as much as I could make it dead. So that's the first test. Second test, excuse me, I cranked it for 2 minutes. And let me tell you, that was hard. For an old man like me, cranking that baby for 2 minutes was hard. And I'll tell you a little bit about that later. I promise, I'll tell you later. Okay, I cranked it for 120 seconds, played the radio for 453 seconds. 453. No, pretty good. And that was only 2 minutes of cranking from a dead battery. So then, since I wanted to crank it for 5 minutes, again, I discharged this thing between each test. So it started with kind of a dead battery. Not real controlled dead battery, but it was a dead battery. So I says, there's no way this old man can crank that thing for 5 minutes. There's just no way. So what I did, I said, okay, let me do this. I'll crank it for a minute. Then I'll stop and I'll rest and I'll rub my wrist for a minute. Kind of get it in circulation back in. And I'll crank it for another minute. So I did that for 5 minutes. 5 minutes of cranking, 5 minutes of resting. Then I played the radio. The radio played for 1,680 seconds. And that is, I don't know, about 28 minutes. It played for about 28 minutes. That's cool. So 5 sessions of 1 minute cranking, 1 minute waiting, 1 minute cranking, 1 minute waiting gave me 28 minutes of radio. Now the radio draws a lot more power than the lamp or the flashlight, so the flashlight would last a lot longer than that. Okay, and then the reason I didn't test the fast flashlight function after doing some kind of charging is it would just take too long to drain the flashlight, because these are LEDs, and they're smart LEDs. They got PhDs, so they're not going to draw much power. Okay, so let me go back to my chart. I know you can't read it. So as far as cranking feature, now it did not meet the specs. I got the sheet right here, and the sheet says, for instance, hand cranking for 1 minute produces 70 minutes of continuous light, or 16 to 20 minutes of continuous radio use. Now, depending on volume. Now, I did my test. Again, to give it maximum load, I did it at maximum volume. So some of these numbers should increase if you crank the volume down and don't run it at maximum volume. So you're going to get more. So I got 28 seconds on 5 minutes on-off cranking, 28 minutes. They say, and I was running the radio at maximum volume, they said you would get 20 minutes for hand cranking for 1 minute. Well, let me go back to that. I cranked for 1 minute, 60 seconds, and the radio played for 3 minutes. So that's comparison 1-to-1. This says crank for 1 minute and it played 20 minutes. I only got 3 or 4 minutes, but I was at maximum volume. So maybe my 3 minutes would go to maybe 5 minutes if I had the volume turned down. That's just a guess. But that's way short of the 16 to 20 minutes advertised. So it didn't meet the advertising. But it did work. And it did work pretty good, especially with my 5, 5, 5, 5. That worked pretty good. I got, you know, like, what did I say? 28, I don't know, what did I say? 28 minutes. No, that's not bad. That's usable. That's totally usable. Forget about what they claim. It's never right. Okay. Now, the next test I did, which was inconclusive, really. And I'll tell you why. Okay, the next test is solar charging in my plant, and I charged for 8 hours. But since there was a storm coming, it was overcast that whole time, so I didn't get full sun. Now, what they claim is average sunlight. Now, I wouldn't call mine average. Mine was below average. And you put it in the sun, this average sunlight, for 10 to 12 hours. I only had that's hard to get. I mean, maybe if you live in Alaska and it's the right time of year, you can get 10 to 12 hours. It's hard to get 10 to 12 hours of decent solar light, whatever. So, and it says, and there's no claim, that's funny, there's no claim to how much radio or flashlight power you'll get out of this 10 hours. It doesn't say. So it doesn't fail because it doesn't say what you're going to get out of putting it in the sun. But anyway, what I got for 8 hours in overcast, so sometimes the full sun, most time filtered sun through the clouds. I couldn't get the radio to come on. The radio would not play. I would turn it on, it would hear it click, and maybe it was like on for a microsecond, and it would shut off. So there was not enough charge in the built-in battery to run the radio after having it outside in the sun, overcast conditions. Just forget it. It ain't going to work. Now, like I said before, we had a storm coming in. It was overcast, so it wasn't a fair test. I didn't get full sun for the 8 hours. So that's going to take a while to do that because, like I say, here in Florida, you don't get full sun all day long. It's very rare, but you get it every once in a while. But I'm just going to say that ain't going to hack it, even with full sun, because the solar cell is not that big. I mean, you take these dollar lights that just stick out in your yard, and they've got a AAA battery. It's a 1.5 volt battery. It's a AAA, so it doesn't have much capacity. And that will charge, if it's in full sun, and I've got them all over my yard, if it's in full sun, it'll charge enough during the day to illuminate the one tiny little LED all night long. Now that load on that LED is going to be nothing compared, where'd the radio go? Oh, it's over here. Nothing compared to what this radio needs. So that little cell, I don't think it's going to hack it. So I wouldn't depend on that. Now, like I say, maybe, and of course I was always doing my test with the battery completely drained as much as possible. So I was starting this solar charging with a dead battery, and I wasn't trying to do a solar charge to boost the battery capacity above some level. It was basically discharged. Okay, so that's solar charging. I'm getting it stars, and the crank charging, I gave it a star. Okay, the solar charging, no star. It does not get a star. Okay, the next one is kind of the opposite. It's USB charging the internal battery to this radio via some external device or computer or whatever. So that's to charge this internal battery. And it has a little red LED that when it is illuminated, it tells you that the internal battery is being charged. So I hooked the USB adapter to my computer, and that light came on really bright compared to all other conditions, such as cranking. The light came on, but it wasn't real bright. In the sun, solar, the LED was barely on, the one that tells you it's charging. But via USB, that light was like bright as ever. I mean, you could light the room with a LED, well, not really. So it has an LED light to tell you, a red LED light to tell you it's charging. So what I did is I put it on my computer, and I charged, because I started it late at night. I just said, okay, I don't care, how long it takes to charge. I'm just going to let it charge. And sure enough, in the morning when I came in, the LED light was off, meaning that it was the internal battery was fully charged. Okay, so from that condition, I ran the radio. Ran the radio? It's probably not good English. I used the radio, and it played for 9,480 seconds. Now, what was that? That was, I can't remember this in my head. Where the heck is it? Oh, that was 2 hours and 38 minutes. So, basically that's saying the capacity of the rechargeable battery in this thing is good for 2.5 hours of playing the radio, full volume again, because I wanted to give it max load, full volume. So that was pretty good. Now, of course, when you're in an emergency, you're not going to turn the radio on and leave it on, and you're not going to run it at full blast. So that could last quite a while just on charging the internal battery full. Pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to give that a star. Now, the last thing that they claim to fame is cell phone charging via the crank. Okay, so again, with the battery in this thing discharged, I hooked this to my cell phone, which is a smartphone. It uses a lot of power, got a big battery. It's an HTC Evo, about 2 years old. Well, and so I hooked it up and I cranked on it, and sure enough, the phone, I had the phone on, and the phone had been discharged to 4%. It had 4% of battery left. That number is kind of not that accurate, but it's an indication. So it was down to 4%. It still would turn on, but it'd give me this error or this message: you got to charge your battery, or I'm going to shut off, and it'll shut off. So I took it up and cranked it, and I cranked it for a minute, and I turned the phone off, but not totally off. You know how that is. It's kind of running in the background, but the screen's off. So I put it in that condition, and I cranked it, and it indicated that it was getting charged. And so I cranked it for a minute. I stopped cranking it. I turned the phone on, and I had a little program that tells me the battery status, and it gives me the battery charge and a percentage. And it started out, before I started charging it, it was at 4%. When I finished charging it, after a minute of cranking, it was still at 4%. It didn't change. So then I cranked it for an additional minute, and it showed the charge on the battery in the phone. It went from 4% to 5%. Not a big increase. So then I tried my 5 minutes, where 5 minutes, 1 minute on, 1 minute off, Tried that sequence for a total of 5 minutes. Turned the phone on, and it still only indicated that it was now at 5%. And again, that's kind of rough numbers. So, did it charge my phone? Yeah. Did it charge it enough to really use the phone in the limited time I cranked it? Now I'm going to talk about cranking this thing. This thing, when you've got, depending on the load, whether you're charging the battery or you're charging your cell phone, cranking this thing is difficult. It is hard to crank. I mean, it's got a lot of resistance, especially when I was trying to charge that cell phone. I mean, my wrists were really hurting after 60 seconds of cranking. So, unless you got a very good, strong wrist, or you got a teenager that's good and strong, trying to charge your cell phone with this guy is going to be a workout, a real workout. But I am saying that it's possible, and it will work. And we're talking about emergency conditions where your phone doesn't work because the battery's too low. So, yeah, I think you can do it. Now, the other thing you can do is, I noticed when I put it down that the phone was still showing that it was being charged by what was left in the internal battery. So it was doing it. Okay, let's get on here. Oh gosh, I'm up 23 minutes now. I didn't want to go past 25. I just got 3 pages to do. All right, moving on. Okay, test results. Features. The AM/FM radio was good. The AM was not that good. FM was very good, which apparently is not too hard to achieve when you can get these dollar FM radios, and they seem to work just as good. So I gave that 1 star. The weather radio had good reception, but unlike ones that are a little more expensive, say like $29, this one you have to use analog tuning to tune everything, AM, FM, and weather. Some of the other ones that look very similar to this have a little slider up here, and they have preset frequencies for the weather band. So you're locked in. There's like 7 of them. You're locked in, and you just keep sliding it until you find the one that's the strongest for your area. So that's easy to tune. This one, it's analog and it's kind of a little touchy, but it's achievable. So it's okay. Again, only 20 bucks. So I would give the weather radio a star. The flashlight was very bright when that battery was fully charged, and it appeared to have low power consumption, so it didn't last a long time. So I gave the flashlight a star. So we got 3 stars on that. Okay, now we're getting close to the end here. Just hang in there a few more seconds. We're almost there. Okay, conclusion and observation. Radio function, I gave it a star. Light function, I gave it a star. Crank charging, I gave it a star. Because it does work, and it will charge the radio, so its radio is usable. It will do a little bit charging of your cell phone, at least my cell phone, and of course there's billions of cell phones out there. USB charging of the internal battery. In other words, using the adapter cable they give you to hook it up to your computer or whatever your USB power source is to charge the internal battery. That worked fine. So I gave that a star. The cell phone charging by itself, just that function, it did work, although it's going to be a struggle. So I gave it a star. It does work. I gave it a star. Or in an emergency, you got something. Ease of use except cranking. Wait a minute. I can't read this thing. Okay, the cell phone charging, because it was hard to crank and it only charged it a little tiny bit, I did not give it a star. So I correct myself. So it didn't get a star on that one. Close, but not a star. And then I didn't have half stars. Okay, so no star on cell phone charging. Ease of use except cranking. As I said, cranking, really. So it's working. That means it's, working. I gave overall, except for cranking, the radio was easy to use. Not a problem. Waterproof. Now, if you go to Amazon and you go down to the bottom, not this description I showed you, but down the bottom where it has the description, it says in there that it's waterproof. Okay. There's no way it's waterproof. It's got cracks and crevices the way water could get in. Forget it. It's not waterproof. No star. Battery. The little battery gets in there. It's adequate. And I got tell you something I'll tell you about that in a second. The size and weight was excellent. It was nice, compact, easy to fit in your hand. I gave it a star. Price, $20. I could have gave it 2 stars, but I'm only allowed to give it 1 star. So, conclusion was, total of 8 stars out of 10. Buy one. Especially if you live in Florida or anything along the coast with those hurricanes or any place internal where those tornadoes are going to be. Get one. 20 bucks. It's worth it. Now, like I say, you can spend a lot more and get a lot more features and functions. 20 bucks, how can you go wrong? Last one, take this off the thing. The last one, and we're going to make it under 30 minutes maybe. Quirks. Okay, and I'll just read these because it's impossible for me to hold this up for you to read. Quirks. Not waterproof as advertised. I just said that. No battery condition, so you have no idea how much the battery's charged. So no indication. Again, 20 bucks. I expect. No AC adapter. Okay, no big deal. No compartment for regular batteries. So you got the internal battery, which is one of those foam batteries that has a little lead on it and then the plug-in thing. That's all you get. The $40 or $50, $60 radios, they give you that, plus they give you the compartment to put rechargeable batteries, so you got a lot of power. This one, $20, it doesn't have that function. Okay. With heavy loads, such as the cell phone, it's extremely hard to crank. It's hard to hold this thing. It's hard to hold this thing and crank it. It's not really set up. And one of the other problems with holding it and cranking is this is the switch for the LED light. And when you're holding it like this, you have a tendency to push that because you're cranking so hard. So that's kind of a quirk. Not a big deal. You can get used to it, but it's kind of a quirk. It's going to be very, very difficult to change this. I'll pull it out as much as I can. Come on, phone. Okay, to change this battery, because the connector, and you can't see it on my camera, connector is buried down inside this thing. It's not accessible at all. I can barely see it, and I don't know how you'd ever get it out. You'd probably have to, even though it gives you this little access panel, you're probably going to have to take all these screws out so that you can get to that connector. I mean, it's way over up inside here. So that's going to be a problem. That's a negative. You shouldn't have to do that maybe once a year or something, because those batteries last for a long time. The battery is only 300 milliamp hours. So it's a small battery, small capacity, but again, it's for emergency use. It's 3.4 volts. So anyway, in conclusion, I say get you one of these. It's $20. I got them on my Amazon store. This is not an advertisement for selling them, but this is the review. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them. If you enjoyed this show, even though it's long, please give me a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.